The tallest building in New York City stood like a giant metal mountain, its glass windows sparkling under the morning sun. At the very top floor was the headquarters of Vertex Technologies, one of the most powerful tech companies in the world. Inside, the air buzzed with tension. Something was very wrong. The company's supercomputer, a machine so important it controlled everything from banking systems to hospital records, had started acting strange. Without warning, it would suddenly shut down, its screens going black, its fans whirring to a stop. Each time it crashed, the entire company froze. Workers stared at their blank monitors. Important deals were delayed. Scientists lost hours of research. Every minute the computer stayed broken, Vertex lost more money than most people made in a year. Daniel Kingsley, the CEO of Vertex, was not a man who panicked. He had built his company from nothing, turning it into a billion-dollar empire through sheer willpower. But even he was starting to sweat. He had called an emergency meeting with his top executives. "We have 20 of the best engineers in the world downstairs right now," said one of his managers. "They've been working nonstop for 3 days. None of them can figure it out." Daniel clenched his jaw. "Then get more. Call whoever you need to call. This cannot continue." Down in the server room, the 20 specialists were indeed struggling. They came from the best universities, had solved impossible problems before, but this was different. The machine wasn't just broken, it was unpredictable. It would work fine for hours, then suddenly die without warning. One engineer, a woman named Dr. Chen, had dark circles under her eyes from staring at code for too long. "It makes no sense," she muttered. "The diagnostics show everything is normal right up until the crash." Another specialist, a man named Raj, was on his knees checking cables. "Maybe it's a power surge," he suggested. "We already checked that," said a third engineer, rubbing his forehead. "The backups are all stable. There's no reason for this." The group argued back and forth, theories flying, tempers rising. Meanwhile, the clock kept ticking. The company was now losing $10 million every hour the system stayed down. Reporters were starting to ask questions. Investors were getting nervous. Up in his office, Daniel Kingsley stared out the window at the city below. Somewhere in this building, he knew there had to be an answer. He just didn't know where to look. Little did he know, the solution wasn't in a lab or an office. It was in the hands of a man who came in after dark, who walked these halls unseen, and who understood machines in a way no one else did. The elevator doors slid open on the 47th floor, and Marcus Johnson stepped out with his cleaning cart. The floor was quiet now, most of the office workers having gone home hours ago. Only the hum of computers and the occasional beep from the server room broke the silence. Marcus moved slowly but steadily, his mop swishing across the tile floor in smooth, practiced motions. At 62 years old, Marcus had been cleaning the Vertex Technologies building for nearly 12 years. He knew every hallway, every office, every squeaky floorboard. The night security guards nodded to him as he passed. They were used to seeing his familiar face moving through the empty corridors. To most people in the building, Marcus was just part of the background, like the potted plants or the water coolers. But Marcus noticed everything. He saw which executives stayed late working Mr. Kingsley almost every night. He knew which engineers left half-empty coffee cups everywhere, the young ones always. And lately, he'd been noticing the growing panic around the failing supercomputer. As Marcus pushed his cart past the server room, he could hear the frustrated voices inside. The door was propped open, and through the crack he saw the team of specialists huddled around blinking machines. Their expensive suits were wrinkled, their hair messy from running hands through it too many times. "Tried rerouting through the tertiary backup," one was saying. "Thermal imaging shows no hotspots," argued another. Marcus paused his mopping for just a moment, listening. The flashing air lights on the main console caught his eye. That particular pattern, 3 red, 1 yellow, then 2 red again, it looked familiar. 30 years ago, fresh out of Howard University with an engineering degree, Marcus had worked on early computer systems for NASA. Back then, machines were simpler, but problems like this weren't so different. He remembered a similar issue at his old job, not enough power getting to the secondary cooling system causing random shutdowns. His fingers twitched on the mop handle. He could picture exactly which component to check, which cable might be the culprit. But who would listen to an old janitor? The last time he'd mentioned an idea to one of the young engineers, the man had just smiled politely and walked away. Marcus sighed and went back to mopping. He had 3 more floors to clean before his shift ended at midnight. His knees ached, they always did these days, and he needed to get home to check on his wife, Gloria. Her diabetes medicine was expensive, but at least his job here provided health insurance. As he worked, Marcus kept glancing at the server room door. The voices inside grew louder, more desperate. He heard something crash, probably a coffee cup hitting the floor in frustration. The company was losing money by the minute, and Marcus knew something they didn't. He thought about Gloria, about their tiny apartment in Queens, about the stack of unpaid bills on their kitchen table. Then he thought about how it felt to solve a tough engineering problem, that moment when everything finally clicked into place. The mop slowed to a stop. Marcus looked at his wrinkled hands, at the cleaning cart, then back at the server room. Maybe, just maybe. The fluorescent lights in the server room buzzed like angry insects, casting a pale glow over the exhausted engineers who had been working around the clock for 3 straight days. Empty coffee cups and crumpled energy bar wrappers littered every available surface. The air smelled of stale pizza and frustration. Marcus pushed his cleaning cart past the open doorway for what felt like the 100th time that week. Each night, he'd listen to the specialists arguing, watch them run test after test, seen their shoulders slump lower with each failed attempt. Tonight was different, though. The tension in the room was so thick you could almost touch it. Dr. Chen, her normally perfect hair now sticking up in all directions, threw her hands in the air. "I'm going to get more coffee," she announced. "Maybe caffeine will make this make sense." One by one, the others followed. 5-minute break, muttered Raj, rubbing his bloodshot eyes. The group shuffled out, leaving the server room empty except for the blinking machines and Marcus, who stood frozen in the hallway. This was his chance. Marcus's heart pounded so loud he was sure the security cameras could hear it. His palms grew slick against the mop handle. For 12 years he'd kept his head down, done his job, stayed invisible. But this problem called to him in a language only he seemed to understand. Setting the mop carefully against the wall, Marcus slipped into the server room. The massive computer tower loomed before him, its lights flashing that same pattern he'd recognized days ago: 3 red, 1 yellow, 2 red. Just like the NASA systems back in '89. He moved without hesitation, his hands remembering what his mind had never forgotten. Kneeling beside the humming tower, Marcus reached behind the main unit, where a small secondary power box was almost hidden from view. Most engineers wouldn't even know it was there. It had been added years after the initial installation as a temporary fix that became permanent. "This is you," Marcus whispered to the machine as his fingers found the power switch. "You're getting mixed signals, aren't you, old girl?" With a gentle click, he turned off the backup unit. Then, taking a deep breath, Marcus pressed the main restart button. For 3 terrifying seconds, nothing happened. Marcus's stomach dropped. Had he made things worse? Would they fire him for touching equipment? How would Gloria manage without his insurance? Then a soft whirring began. The tower's lights flickered to life in a new, steady pattern.
Green, green, green.
The monitors blinked on, displaying rows of perfect code. The cooling fans purred like a contented cat. Marcus had just enough time to step back before the engineers came rushing in, drawn by the sound of the revived system. "What happened?" Dr. Chen gasped, staring at the now functional screens. Raj checked the diagnostics, his mouth falling open. It's working perfectly. All systems normal." Their heads swiveled toward Marcus, who stood quietly by the door, hands clasped behind his back. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then one of the younger engineers noticed the switched-off backup unit. "Wait, did you?" Marcus met their stunned gazes and gave the smallest nod. The room erupted into chaos, questions flying, voices overlapping, fingers pointing at readouts that showed the problem had been exactly where Marcus knew it would be. In the commotion, no one noticed the security camera in the corner capturing everything. No one saw the alert that flashed on the monitor in the building's security office. And certainly no one could have predicted that right at that moment. Daniel Kingsley was watching the live feed from his penthouse apartment, his expensive coffee forgotten as he leaned closer to the screen. Marcus's work boots squeaked against the polished marble floor as he followed the nervous assistant down the hallway he'd only ever cleaned, never walked as a guest. His uniform shirt, freshly pressed for the first time in years, clung to his back with nervous sweat. The assistant kept glancing at him sideways, as if trying to solve a puzzle. "That's Mr. Kingsley's private elevator," the assistant said when Marcus hesitated at the golden doors. "He's waiting for you." The ride to the top floor took only 30 seconds, but felt like an hour. Marcus watched the floor numbers light up one after another, his reflection ghostly in the polished brass. He'd never been above the 50th floor before. The maintenance staff weren't allowed up here unless it was an emergency. When the doors opened, Marcus stepped into a world of floor-to-ceiling windows and modern art that probably cost more than his entire apartment building. The assistant led him past a sleek reception desk where 3 perfectly groomed women stopped typing to stare. "Mr. Johnson to see you, sir," the assistant announced at the massive oak door. Daniel Kingsley's office was bigger than Marcus's entire apartment. The CEO sat behind a desk so large it could have doubled as a conference table, sunlight glinting off his silver cufflinks as he looked up from his computer. "Marcus Johnson," Kingsley said, not smiling. "Please sit." The chair was leather, so soft Marcus felt like he might sink right through it. He perched on the edge, hands clasped tightly in his lap. The security footage from last night played silently on Kingsley's monitor. Marcus entering the server room, his quick fix, the engineer's shock. "I watched this 12 times, Kingsley said finally. 20 of my best people couldn't solve this in 3 days. You did it in under a minute." He leaned forward.
How?
Marcus took a deep breath. The words came slowly at first, then faster, as he remembered. The backup power unit was installed in 2012 during the server upgrade. It was supposed to be temporary until the new cooling system came online, but budgets got cut, and we never finished the upgrade. Kingsley finished, eyes widening slightly. "How did you know that?" "I used to work on similar systems at NASA in the 80s, Marcus said. "When they added that secondary unit, they didn't properly isolate the power feeds. The 2 systems were fighting each other, each thinking it was in charge. That's why the crashes were random. It depended which system won the tug-of-war that day." Kingsley sat back in his chair, studying Marcus like he was seeing him for the first time. "You have an engineering degree?" "Yes, sir. Howard University, class of '83. The CEO's fingers tapped rhythmically on the desk. "And you've been cleaning my floors for 12 years next month." For the first time, Kingsley's polished expression cracked. 12. He stood abruptly and walked to the window, looking out over the city. When he turned back, his voice was different. "Why?" Marcus looked down at his work-roughened hands. The story came out in pieces: the layoffs during the tech downturn, the months of job hunting where no one wanted a middle-aged engineer, Gloria's diabetes diagnosis, the mounting medical bills. "I took the first job that offered health insurance," Marcus said simply. "Then you get used to being invisible." Kingsley was silent for a long moment. Then he pressed a button on his desk. "Janet, cancel my next meeting. And bring us some coffee." He looked at Marcus with new intensity. "Real coffee, not the break room stuff. I think you and I have a lot to talk about." The coffee cup trembled in Marcus's hands as he stared at Daniel Kingsley. The rich aroma of the CEO's private reserve blend, something Marcus had only ever smelled when cleaning the executive lounge, swirled between them. "You're offering me?" Marcus's voice caught. "Lead systems analyst." Kingsley nodded, tapping a pen against his desk. "Starting salary of $210,000. Full benefits. And..." He paused, meeting Marcus's eyes. "We'll calculate 12 years of back pay at that rate. The lawyers are drawing up the paperwork now." The numbers swirled in Marcus's head. $210,000. More money than he'd made in 5 years of cleaning. 12 years of back pay, that was over $2 million. His knees went weak. I don't know what to say," Marcus whispered. "Say yes," Kingsley replied with the ghost of a smile. "The team needs you. That backup unit isn't our only Band-Aid solution around here. When the elevator doors opened on the 47th floor, Marcus stepped out into chaos. Word had spread. The entire engineering team stood waiting in the hallway. Dr. Chen stepped forward first, extending her hand. "Mr. Johnson," she said, her voice thick. "I owe you an apology. And thank you." One by one, the specialists shook his hand, the same hands they'd walked past for years without seeing. Raj clapped him on the back. The youngest engineer, who'd once ignored Marcus's suggestion about a leaky faucet, looked ready to cry. Can you show us what you did?" one asked. Marcus nodded, leading them to the server room. For the first time, he entered not as a cleaner, but as the person they all turned to for answers. The workday passed in a blur. HR processed his paperwork at lightning speed. Someone brought him a Vertex Technologies polo shirt to replace his janitor's uniform. When he tried to return his cleaning supplies, the facility's manager just shook his head. "Keep the keys," he said. "After today, you can go anywhere in this building you want." At exactly 5:30 p.m., the earliest Marcus had left work in decades, he found himself standing outside his apartment building. The familiar cracked concrete steps looked different somehow. His hand shook as he turned the key in the lock. "Gloria," he called, stepping inside. His wife sat at the kitchen table, sorting pills into her weekly medication organizer. She looked up, concern flashing across her face. "Marcus? You're home early. Is everything?" He crossed the room in 3 strides, pulling her up into his arms. The words tumbled out between laughter and tears: the promotion, the salary, the back pay. Gloria's knees buckled. They sank to the floor together, clinging to each other as decades of worry melted away. "We can pay off the medical bills," Gloria whispered against his shoulder. "We can get you that specialist in Boston," Marcus answered. "We can." Gloria pulled back, her tear-streaked face suddenly serious. "Marcus Johnson, you march right back there tomorrow and get that in writing." Marcus laughed, the sound foreign and wonderful in their tiny kitchen. He pulled the folded offer letter from his pocket. Gloria's hands shook as she read it, her breath catching at the numbers. That night, for the first time in years, they left the lights on when they went to bed. No more counting pennies. No more worrying about next month's rent. As Marcus lay staring at the ceiling, Gloria's hand found his in the dark. "Tomorrow," she whispered, "you're going to buy yourself a new tie." The morning sun streamed through Marcus's new corner office window, casting warm rectangles of light across the framed photos on his desk. Gloria at their 30th anniversary dinner, his old Howard University graduation picture, and a recent shot of them both standing proudly in front of their first home purchase. 6 months had passed since that life-changing meeting in Kingsley's office, but Marcus still paused sometimes to run his fingers along the polished lead systems analyst nameplate on his door. At his workstation, 3 monitors displayed real-time system diagnostics. Marcus's redesign of Vertex's core infrastructure had reduced server crashes by 92%. His simple but brilliant solution to the cooling system issue was now patented in his name, with the company's full support. The quarterly reports showed his innovations had saved Vertex $37 million already. A soft knock interrupted his thoughts. "Mr. Johnson?" A young intern peeked in nervously. "The new candidates are here for the fellowship program." Mr. Kingsley asked if you'd join him in the conference room. Marcus smiled. This was the part of his new role he loved most. The elevator ride downstairs was nothing like his first nervous ascent to the executive floor. Now, employees at all levels greeted him by name. The receptionist waved him through with a smile. Inside the conference room, Daniel Kingsley stood addressing a diverse group of applicants, older workers looking to re-enter the workforce, self-taught coders without formal degrees, veterans transitioning to civilian careers. All people who might have been overlooked before. "Ah, Marcus." Kingsley motioned him forward. "I was just telling our candidates about our most valuable employee." Marcus shook his head modestly as the group applauded. He remembered being where they sat uncertain, hoping for just one chance to prove himself. Vertex's Second Chance program, Kingsley continued, is about recognizing that talent and wisdom come in many forms. Thanks to Marcus, We now actively seek out experienced professionals who may have been sidelined by circumstance. After the presentation, Marcus lingered to speak with applicants. He spent 20 minutes with a former auto mechanic who taught himself robotics, reviewing his designs. He listened carefully to a grandmother who'd raised 6 children while maintaining a passion for coding. Each conversation reminded him of his own journey. Later that afternoon, Marcus and Kingsley stood watching through the glass walls as the engineering team, now more diverse in age, background, and experience than any other in Silicon Valley, collaborated on a new project. "You've changed this company, Marcus," Kingsley said quietly. "Not just our systems, our soul." Marcus thought about Gloria's recent doctors report her improved numbers thanks to better healthcare. He thought about the thank you notes from scholarship recipients at his alma mater. Most of all, he thought about the janitors, cafeteria workers, and maintenance staff who now looked him in the eye with hope instead of looking through him with resignation. "It's not just about me anymore," Marcus replied. "It's about all the people like me who just needed someone to see their worth." In the months that followed, Vertex's reputation transformed. Tech publications wrote articles about the Marcus effect, how valuing overlooked talent had boosted innovation. Competitors scrambled to launch similar programs. At industry conferences, Marcus found himself approached by executives asking how to replicate their success. But the moment Marcus cherished most came one evening as he worked late. Passing the server room, he saw 2 things that would have been unthinkable a year earlier: a group of young engineers listening intently to a 60-year-old intern explaining a system quirk, and hanging proudly on the wall beside the mainframe a framed janitor's shirt with a small plaque that read, "Talent wears many uniforms." The auditorium lights shimmered like stars as Marcus adjusted his tie at the podium. 10 years had passed since that fateful night in the server room, yet here he stood in Vertex's newly constructed Johnson Kingsley Hall, surrounded by the next generation of engineers. The smell of fresh polish on the hardwood stage mixed with the floral bouquets lining the steps a far cry from the lemon-scented cleaning supplies he'd once carried. "Look at you," Gloria whispered beside him, squeezing his arm. Her diabetes was now well-controlled, thanks to years of proper care. The worry lines that had once etched her face had softened into laugh lines. Marcus cleared his throat as the crowd quieted. Before him sat 200 scholarship recipients, the Marcus Johnson Fellows, their bright eyes watching with anticipation. In the front row, Daniel Kingsley sat with his grandchildren, his once jet-black hair now fully silver. "When I first walked through Vertex's doors," Marcus began, his voice steady, "I believed my best years were behind me." A ripple of laughter passed through the audience. "I thought the world had moved on, that my knowledge had expired like milk in the fridge." The students chuckled, but Marcus saw understanding dawning on their faces. He continued, sharing how one moment of courage had rewritten his story and how it had helped rewrite Vertex's story too. The company's Second Chance program had placed over 1,400 workers in meaningful tech jobs. The scholarship fund had sent 379 students through college. And that original janitor's uniform? It now hung in the Smithsonian's American History Museum. As Marcus spoke, his gaze drifted to the back of the room where a group of maintenance workers stood watching. Among them was a young janitor named Jamal, who Marcus had recently discovered studying coding manuals during his lunch breaks. Next week, Jamal would start Vertex's apprenticeship program. The reception afterward buzzed with energy. Kingsley found Marcus near the punch bowl. "Remember when you were afraid to touch that server?" he teased, clinking his glass against Marcus's. Marcus smiled, watching Jamal animatedly explaining an idea to one of Vertex's senior engineers. "I was thinking about that night just yesterday. How different everything could have been if I'd kept mopping past that door." Kingsley grew serious. "But you didn't. And because of that..." He gestured around the room filled with people whose lives had been changed by the policies Marcus inspired. Later, as Marcus and Gloria prepared to leave, a young woman approached hesitantly. "Mr. Johnson," she said, "I'm a first-generation college student. Your scholarship made it possible for me to..." Her voice broke. Marcus pulled her into a hug as Gloria handed her a tissue. This moment, he realized, was the true legacy, not the awards or newspaper articles, but these human connections that would continue rippling outward long after he was gone. Walking to their car hand in hand, Gloria leaned her head on Marcus's shoulder. "Who would have thought," she murmured, "that all those years of pushing your mop cart would lead to this?" Marcus paused to look back at the gleaming building, its windows reflecting the sunset. Inside, Jamal was now deep in conversation with Dr. Chen's successor. Somewhere, another janitor was taking notes as engineers debated a problem. In classrooms across the country, Marcus Johnson scholars were solving tomorrow's challenges today. The lesson was simple but profound. Potential hides in plain sight every day. In the custodial closet, behind the delivery cart, beneath the security guard's hat. The magic happens when someone finally sees it, and even more when we all learn to look. As the car pulled away, Marcus smiled. His story had come full circle, but the best part? It was just one of many now. The end.